Hi, this is On Air, and I'm your host, Klara Syrewicz. Today, we'll look at a small state that does a lot of damage. Just to give you a hint of what we're talking about, think of the most inappropriate place for a climate conference. Later in our report, we'll circle back to a different spot, but with an equally delightful regime, one that has taken repression to a new international level.
Guess who's back again. Shady's back.
No, not him. As if half of Europe didn't wake up screaming to that news. No, I'm talking about another returning hero, and he's climbing a drainpipe back to prominence. It's your favorite drug-loving, gay orgy-escaping, lockdown-breaking, ultra-conservative and anti-LGBTQ, József Szájer. Viktor Orbán has appointed him head of the Institute for a Free Europe. It's a very accurately named institution for this director. I would even add radical freedom to the moniker. My guess is that lowering the age of consent and legalizing MDMA should be his first priority. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. There's something else on everyone's lips. No, not him again. It's Azerbaijan. The former Soviet Republic, much like the United Arab Emirates last year, is hosting the world's most important climate conference, COP29, despite being one of the world's top fossil fuel exporters. Yes, what you're looking at is a beach resort in Azerbaijan. Enjoy your holidays. And with the conference barely underway, Azerbaijan was already trying to use it to make fossil fuel deals. An undercover investigator for the NGO Global Witness posed as an investor and filmed the conference's top official offering very polluting opportunities. But that's not the start of the controversies. Even before anyone's arrival, the country's abysmal human rights record created unease, which prompted another top official to fulminate, "Don't bring your human rights concerns to Azerbaijan." Eager to make a stronger point before Brussels lawmakers, the Azerbaijani ambassador to the EU made death threats against his Armenian counterpart. Still, it's an improvement over last year when he threatened to shoot a delegation of European parliamentarians that ventured too close to Azerbaijan's border for his liking. And to think the country spent $4.7 million on lobbying efforts to improve its international image ahead of the conference. That seems to be working. You can tell the country has been visibly emboldened recently, first by its very profitable gas deal signed with the EU following the imposition of sanctions on Russia. A deal the European Commission extended last year, promising to double the size of imports by 2027. And second, by its successful military offensive, which took back the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh from Armenia. But Azerbaijan is also high on its newly acquired proximity to Russia, which increasingly depends on its neighbor to access global markets, and whose gas Baku is actually laundering for sales on EU markets, but that's a side note. Despite its relative obscurity, Azerbaijan is strongly elbowing its way among Western countries with the resolve of an aspiring member of the CRINCS. That's the new axis of evil for you, with China, Russia, Iran and North Korea. And because every self-respecting dictatorship needs a nemesis, Azerbaijan is going with... no, not Armenia this time. And not this guy. It's France. I can tell you blinking now. What? Azerbaijan has been infecting French diplomats' phones with spyware, imprisoning French entrepreneurs, meddling in local politics, and inciting violence in France's overseas territories, and is even the likely culprit behind the assassinations of several Azerbaijani opposition figures on French soil. Wow, those guys really hate the French. I can't remember anyone hating France so much since Algeria in 1962. Why is that happening? There are several possible answers. Envy. Okay, that was an easy one. A lot of people would be putting French diplomats into prison if that was the case, so probably not. Although they do inspire those feelings, right? France is a traditional ally of Christian Armenia, Azerbaijan's neighbor and historic rival, and is also home to a large Armenian diaspora. That's certainly one reason. Azerbaijani strongman Ilham Aliyev has repeatedly accused the EU and France in particular of stoking tensions in Nagorno-Karabakh. Staying true to the legacy of KGB infiltration of Western anti-war and anti-colonial movements, Azerbaijan invited representatives from the French overseas territories to a conference that saw the creation of the Baku Initiative Group to support their liberation from France. Azerbaijan succeeded in stirring such tensions in New Caledonia that deadly riots erupted on the Pacific Islands. Social media was flooded with a barrage of fake posts, and local independence activists even waved Azerbaijani flags. Just as a reminder, this is New Caledonia. It voted no to independence from France in 2018, 2020 and 2021 in 3 referenda. This is Azerbaijan, and that's the distance between them. And it wasn't even the first smear campaign. The previous one was aimed at sowing doubt about France's ability to host the Olympic Games in Paris. Earlier this year, the Azerbaijani parliament was also clamoring for Corsican independence, putting spyware on the phone of the French ambassador to Armenia, arresting more French citizens, and come September, another Azerbaijani government critic had been killed in Paris. The former French interior minister told the TV channel France 2 that Azerbaijan was carrying out those operations alongside China and Russia, predictably as Krink's little helper. A number of mostly French MEPs have called the EU to axe the gas deal with Azerbaijan, claiming the agreement fuels human rights abuses and allows Russia to launder its fossil fuels, and even to hijack climate conferences. Well, this is very lofty, but what were the French doing all this time to make Azerbaijan so angry? Well, they were selling rival Armenia lots of weapons. Armenia signed a security agreement with France in 2023. It included the sale of defense equipment, notably 3 radar systems and night vision goggles. In February of this year, Armenia agreed to purchase precision rifles, and in June, the French Defense Ministry said that Armenia had bought 36 howitzers. All those moves had predictably sparked vitriolic responses from Azerbaijan and Russia. So I guess they weren't envious of, the French sense of style or their excellent pastries. In any case, Azerbaijan has been snubbed by world leaders, and the COP summit may look like a sad birthday party where none of the cool kids turned up, beside Keir Starmer, who represents not so much his country as the company British Petroleum, incidentally Azerbaijan's biggest foreign investor. But hey, at least representatives of the Taliban were in attendance, so that should make for some nice souvenir pictures. Now let's move on to a country that has even banned Pokemon Go for being a Western intelligence tool. That's Belarus, which is holding elections in January, and even though we already know the results, the Lukashenko regime is getting jittery about potential challenges. That's why it's going after anyone who could remotely constitute a threat, chasing dissenters not just at home, but in other countries as well. More on that in our report.
Halloween this year wasn't just a time for tricks and treats in Russia, but a massive manhunt. Russian authorities launched a coordinated operation targeting Belarusians living across the country. Over the course of 2 days, approximately 300 people were detained in what many are calling a politically motivated roundup, organized by Minsk's security forces.
There has never been such mass detention or such mass action by the punishers, both those in Moscow and those in Minsk.
Among the detained are people accused of criminal charges, as well as defendants in civil and economic cases.
If a person is declared wanted in the Republic of Belarus, they are subsequently added to the interstate wanted list. As a rule, this applies to the Russian Federation.
And that brings us to the Union State, the ambitious but controversial political project to integrate Russia and Belarus more deeply. Leaders Vladimir Putin and Alexander Lukashenko recently committed to strengthening military cooperation, showcasing a united front against threats, especially perceived ones. It's a reminder that while the Union State may look solid on paper, in reality, Belarus is a country struggling to maintain even a semblance of independence. But it's not just within the Union State that Belarusians are facing pressure. Take the case of Andrei Gnyot. Arrested at Belgrade's airport, the activist and journalist faced extradition to Belarus on charges of tax evasion, charges he claimed to be politically motivated. His real crime? Likely speaking out against Lukashenko's regime.
It is a classic example how autocratic regimes use existing legal frameworks, so-called lawfare, to wage war against democratic activists, to pursue transnational repression. First, by using Interpol, he was arrested through red flagged Interpol request, and then using existing extradition treaties with Serbia.
After 7 months in prison and 5 more in house arrest, a breakthrough came at last. Following an intervention from the Belarusian opposition leaders Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya and Serbia's president Alexander Vučić, Gniot was finally freed and allowed to travel to Germany, a small victory in a larger struggle. Just last month, exiled Belarusian journalist Andrei Mieleshka was denied entry to Georgia, despite having lived there for 3 years. The manhunt, the military cooperation, the arrests and the forced exile all paint a clear picture. This is a partnership of convenience, not conviction.
Welcome back. We have Anatol Koto with us.
Nice to see you.
Great to have you here. Hello. Lukashenko is seeking a 7th term. He doesn't want to be surprised this time by any protests. Do you think these intimidating tactics that we just saw in the report will work and they will prevent any forms of dissent?
If we speak about obvious or vivid forms of protests, of course, they are not possible in Belarus since 2021, probably, because that was a peak of the repressions. Then thousands of people were arrested, and these arrests are ongoing right now. This work is unfortunately constantly is being continued by the regime. So the only possible form of protest, if we speak about so-called elections, will be just leaving him alone. Obviously it will be difficult to create a picture that hundreds of thousands of people going to vote. Today he claimed that he has collected more than 700 of thousands of signatures of his supporters, which is totally a lie. It's bullshit. And the 26th of January next year will be a perfect opportunity to show that nobody is really voting for Lukashenko.
Yes, but who will know about that? I mean, he will know about that, but you can manipulate media transmissions, you can make propaganda around the fact that, you show 5 people queuing to vote and that's it. You say there was 700, 7,000, whatever.
That's true, but it's more difficult to achieve this goal, even for Belarusian propaganda, to show some sort of crowds of people or something like this. All these people who are coming to these meetings, they have been pre-selected, and
it's like a Potyomkin's kind of situation.
So for normal people, it will be obvious that there are no 700 or thousands of his signatories right now, and there will be no crowds, no real crowds of people. In comparison to 2020, then crowds of people were queuing for many hours to give their vote for independent or opposite candidates.
Do you think the international context that has changed, because Donald Trump is a bad omen for any forms of resistance to Belarus or to Russia, and the US administration might be less likely to financially or logistically support opposition movements, let alone armies. Do you think that has emboldened Lukashenko in his repressive tactics at home and also abroad?
If we speak about Donald Trump elections, nobody knows what will come out. Russia is unhappy with the outcome of the result, with the outcome of the American elections. Probably they thought that this difference between 2 candidates won't be so obvious, and there will be some room for some not protests but rivals riots in US. Now we see that it's a peaceful process of transferring power. Belarusian dictator has slightly different position. I think that he was hoping that Mike Pompeo, who visited Belarus something like 4 or 5 years ago and had warm talks with Lukashenko, could be back to his position of state secretary, but Donald Trump announced that there is no room for Mike Pompeo in his administration. And I guess some hopes for better relationship between Belarusian regime and the new administration in US also will not come true. So Lukashenko should not be happy with the results of US elections too. The main problem is that administration of Trump probably would be more concentrated on internal affairs. And this means that really Belarusian democratic forces should be concentrated and should be relying on themselves.
During the previous election, the Belarusian opposition used Telegram to organize themselves to avoid raids. But I have a question about how they organize themselves now that Telegram is considered a national security threat in Ukraine. It's a Russian-founded tool, and there's some evidence that they have been giving access to their servers to the FSB and to Belarusian secret services.
This, of course, Telegram is not really top secure messenger. And my personal recommendation is to read some news on Telegram, because it's really easy tool to have different news channels in Telegram. But if we speak about some messaging or communication with each other, it's better to use more secure messengers such as Signal, Element, or Trema, or something like this, which are not considered to be unsafe in Europe or Ukraine.
Usually dissidents in Belarus carry two phones, is that correct?
That's true.
One is the official phone if they get arrested, the other one is the one where they actually read some normal news, not propaganda, where they communicate between themselves. But now I think that the regime has also found very sophisticated ways going beyond those security precautions, because they can infect those phones from, for example, group chats with surveillance malware. They create fake news using artificial intelligence. There's also a big risk that during the election, the whole internet connectivity will be shut down. So what are the ways the opposition can organize itself?
Of course, secret services of Belarus, special services of Belarus are constantly learning. And first of all, you should use VPN, virtual private networks, to secure your own traffic. It's still good to have several phones, not to carry them all day long together, because it will be easier to track that two phones are really are close to each other, and this could also cause some questions from secret services authorities. And if we speak about infecting, of course, if you have been detained, it's better not to use a phone which was in hands of Belarusian police or Belarusian secret services for any communication at all, because 100% you will get some malware installed there. You should mind the internet web pages you are visiting, documents received from the network, not to open them if you are not sure that the source of this document is secure, especially if we speak about PDF files or some images. You should be extremely careful and take care about informational hygiene.
Right. It's been a bad year for incumbents all over the world, so I hope this will apply to Lukashenko as well. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for watching. Next week we'll remain in the Caucasus to discuss Armenia's European aspirations. See you soon.